I went to this, school which is all boys grammar school. You were going to be a professor. You were going to be a highly professional, elite class of person. And I just said it out. It just came out of my mouth. The job master said, "Don't be silly," and the kids laughed in school. And I said, "I'm not being silly. I want to be a pop star."
As a teenager, he told his teacher, I'm going to write music and be a pop star. That didn't go down very well, but he proved them wrong. Our interview with Derek Shulman on Rock History Music. He was born in Glasgow, Scotland in 1947, but moved to England. That's where he grew up. His first big musical success was with Simon Dupree and The Big Sound, which also had Elton John in the band for a while. They had a few hits, but Kites, most notably, was their biggest. In 1970, Derek Shulman and his brothers formed the progressive rock band Gentle Giant. It was one of my favorites. Derek played a few instruments, but he was the lead singer of that band, and he was an incredibly charismatic lead man. Derek's also a perfect example of you can have more than one life. After 10 plus years with Gentle Giant, he came back to the industry, but as a suit, and a damn good one at that. He worked in A&R and executive roles with labels such as Polygram, Atco, and Roadrunner Records. That's where he signed Bon Jovi, Dream Theater, Slipknot, Pantera, AC/DC, and others. His new memoir is called Giant Steps: My Improbable Journey from Stage Lights to Executive Heights. You can pre-order it now. I like stories where our guest kind of knew where they were going. They had that purpose. Derek Shulman certainly did. He's our special guest on Rock History Music. Teacher asks you, what do you want to do? And let me just say it out loud. I'm going to write music and be a pop star. What is it? I would never had the chutzpah to say that in a million years. Who was that kid that said that? I know it was you, but
Yeah, well, as I said to you earlier, music was our life in our house. And I went, as explained
but you let me interrupt you, but you knew to say that you knew.
yeah, I don't know why it came out of my mouth because I went to this, school which is all boys grammar school. You were going to be a professor. You were going to be a physicist. You were going to be a highly professional, elite class of person. And I just said it out. It just came out of my mouth. And the job master said, "Don't be silly," and the kids laughed in school. And I said, "I'm not being silly. I want to be a pop star and a rock star, whatever it was." And 2 or 3 years later, I was. And I remember just leaving school when our first single came out. And I do remember that I was signing autographs for the very same teacher.
No.
Yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
God, I love that.
I was leaving because we were semi-pro, we were going pro. I didn't want to go to university, thankfully. I went to the University of Rock and Roll, basically.
Ian, last time we were talking about the fact that he's just a totally different person on stage, you know.
Yeah.
But he helped you guys a lot. And
Absolutely. Yeah. Tull were incredibly gracious in taking Gentle Giant out on the big European tour and then the North American tour. And we broke from being on tour with them in certain territories in Europe, especially Italy and Germany, where we became pretty big headliners ourselves, and North America, in Canada in particular, Quebec and Ontario, and some of the urban markets. So, and we also we fitted really well with what they were doing and what we were doing, and we also personally got on incredibly well. We had a really fun stage show, and they would watch us, and we would watch them. But certainly, Tull in those days, the Thick as a Brick tour that was, they were spectacular, and Ian was an incredible frontman, and the whole band were just like they were gelling like no one else. And we loved hanging out with them and watching them, and I think they felt the same way about us.
he says he didn't do a lot of crazy stuff as far as excess. And I asked him one day, where'd you write your song? Blah, 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 typical radio announcer question. He says, oh, in a hotel room when everyone else is partying, I write songs out of sheer boredom, he said.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's true, but well, but no, because but yeah, occasionally if you were in a place where you didn't want to be, for a day or two, that you could either get drunk, which they didn't, or do something creative, and that they probably did. Ian probably did do that because I know Ian is very control. He has personal control and likes to be in his own mind and not to be affected by anyone else. And we're again going back to being on the tour with Jethro Tull, we're still friends even to this day, which is great. I mean, I talk about we're talking about 50 years in between being on tour and 50 years afterwards, and we can still pick up a phone or send an email saying how you doing and what are you up to, et cetera, et cetera. So that was we remained friends, and we respected each other musically as well.
Started with your dad and that whole thing, and it's riveting. They always say start in the middle with books. When did that come to mind that that was the starting point?
I think when I first started writing it, I mean, I honestly, had it not been for that situation and what transpired after that, of course, I wouldn't be who I was. And that's basically, and that's what I tried to get over in the book. I mean, not just about music. I mean, the trauma of that situation happening when I was, still a very young teenager. And it basically filtered through the rest of my life, emotionally, musically as well. But having had that situation, my father dying in my arms together with my brother Phil, um, really, I mean, it certainly affected me emotionally, very much so, and also, you know, well, obviously in other ways, which I tried to explain in the book, and that's what I wanted to have in the book. It wasn't just yes, it was about my life as a musician, and then after that as a executive, whatever that means. But certainly, I wanted to include other parts of my life which had nothing to do with music, which had to do with what we all go through. I mean, it's not just me who had these situations that were were traumatic for the rest of your life in different fashions, but also, being Jewish, if you like, not Jewish being per se as a religion, but having that as my centerpiece for morals, if you like, or a way to live your life. Those kind of things were part of it, and I hope they came through in the book. That's what I wanted.
A little while ago, one of the guys I've interviewed the most in my life is probably Rick Emmett of Triumph. I've interviewed him, I think, 9 times because he went into jazz and I was in jazz radio at the time. But his book, Lay It on the Line, of interesting. A lot of fans didn't realize after they read the book that one chapter was about Triumph. One. And
Right.
because his, and I said, why haven't most people? He said, well, I'm hoping people are interested in who I am because my life doesn't start with Triumph. Without the other stuff, Triumph would have never happened without even anything you mentioned in the book. One step and you're going this way.
Right. No, that's exactly the way that I think I hope that I was able to explain in the book. I mean, obviously, music and being a musician was something we all had to do. It wasn't even it wasn't even up for grabs because our whole household was full of music because of my father, because of his life, my mother even, and music was part of our upbringing, as a child and a teenager. So that had to be part of who I was. But obviously, something that happened so traumatically and so, you know, out of the blue, affected us all. Every one of my siblings, not just me.
Sure.
We all were, and I said that categorically, we were all very worried about living past the age of 50, yeah, which is how old he was when he died suddenly. So it was again something that we all had to live through.
I was quite young when I heard Mick Jagger say, "Oh, wait, I didn't think the Stones would last more than a few years," right? But there's also that element of when I'm 20, I'm not thinking about being 50. It's just a foreign thought for a 20-year-old. But when you're that age, when you're a teenager, all of a sudden that plants that software in your head of,
Oh,
listen, it's not infinite here.
No, we were. I mean, I obviously I and my brother Phil more than anyone, but we were all wired. I know this to hopefully live past the age of 50. And that was again, it came so out of the blue because the night before, I think I explained. Look, he did a gig and came back and came, and was himself. And then in the morning he was gone. I mean, it usually doesn't happen just like that, but it did. And so it affected me and all of us for the rest of our lives.
People forget sometimes that if you're your dad could party, but he always got the job done. He always got it done. He was
Right.
always lighting the fire in the morning.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He'd come home late. I mean, from a gig, he'd even, as I explained, he'd bring home musicians after the gig and play in the front room just for himself. Like bebop and modern jazz and then put classical music on. He'll go to bed at 3, but he'd get up first before my mother. And we were, we didn't have any heating. We had a coal fire, which my father would light for everyone before anyone got up. Yeah, that was our lives. And when I was growing up in Port, well, originally in Glasgow, but I came down from Glasgow when I was 2 years old, but in Portsmouth in England, and that was the heat used for having breakfast and going to school.
You started making money. You bought your mom a house. You didn't go out and be where does that kind of learning, where does that come from? Because a lot of people, we both know this, especially you, where you've come and all the different careers you've had in this, that the first thought for a musician is usually excess. And I know that stopped you from being excessive in that way. But where does that come from? Looking after your mom just like that.
Um, I think from both my mom basically taking care of listen, my father was a musician. I mean, he was out every night. Sometimes he'd tour a little bit, and so she'd look after the kids.
Yeah.
And to be perfectly honest, certain things. My father was really a rock and roll. He was like a rock and roller. I mean, there was a biscuit tin where my mother would put a few pounds away, and he'd take out a couple of pounds for a drink with his friends. And this I remember as a little kid, and she'd be pissed off, but she'd understand, everything. I mean, it was a great relationship. So, but I wanted her to have something we wanted her to have something that she didn't have to worry about financially and 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 to be taken care of because she took care of all the kids when our father was away gigging, even though he was always around. So we wanted to take care of her, and that was the absolutely first concern of us that I I was lucky enough to be able to buy the house that she didn't have to pay for.
Make sure you comment on our video, subscribe to our channel, and share our videos. If you want to make a donation, there's a PayPal link at the very top. YouTube has been very unsteady for some creators, including us lately. This is Rock History Music. Till next time.